I'm going to call tonight's meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Murray.
Present.
Councilmember Sonmore.
Here.
Mayor Matsumoto Wright.
Here.
And Councilmember Woodard. Okay, you can't hear, but we see you are attending remotely via teleconference. Also, council members Payne, Donovan, and Ryan, and Mayor Pro Tem Wall asked to be excused.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Well, he's unmuted now.
Councilmember Woodard, are you able to hear us?
I hear.
Oh, we can hear you now.
Yeah, it's very weird. So I heard the clerk and I just heard you, but if anybody else is talking, I didn't hear anybody else.
Okay. We just want to make sure you could hear us and could participate.
Yes, I didn't hear, and then all of a sudden I could. So attending remotely via teleconference. And if we just voted to excuse anybody, I couldn't hear that.
We're doing it right now.
Yeah, not yet. We're about to do that.
Go ahead.
I'm Mayor. I move that we excuse Councilmember Ryan, Councilmember Payne Donovan, and Mayor Pro Tem Wall from tonight's meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, they're excused. Let's see, next is the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor and members of council. First, I would like to request that we add replace item number 9 with the memorandum that you have in front of you for the review and approval of vehicle purchases over $75,000. Our Public Works Director will provide an update on that when we get to that item, but we're bringing these to you. They're not newly budgeted items. They were budgeted by council in 2023, but the cost has increased significantly, and the window for purchasing vehicles on the state contract is rapidly closing. So that's why we're moving this forward tonight, and we'll be happy to discuss that when we get to that agenda item. For my update, there's a few things. On Monday night, we're going to have the comprehensive plan open house here in this room starting at 5 p.m. and going to 6:45, which is immediately before the regularly scheduled planning commission at 7 o'clock. And wanted to remind everybody as well that we are going to be closed tomorrow in observance of Veterans Day. The holiday is Saturday, but we will observe that tomorrow. And let's see. On December 11th, there's a couple of things happening. That's the day that we intend to launch our new utility billing system. So we'll have that up and running, and we have a very robust communications plan surrounding that new system. And we are confident that it will be much more user-friendly to our residents and other ratepayers. And we're also holding on the 11th a self-defense class. The police department is holding a self-defense class. I believe the registrations for that are open now. And moving back just a little bit, I'm excited to mention that on Friday, December 1st, we will hold the annual tree lighting. And we plan to have cookies and a visit from Santa and all kinds of fun stuff, and hopefully great weather. So that's all I have for you this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Is that self-defense class next month?
Yeah, December 11th.
Oh, December 11th. Mm-hmm. Okay. Are there any questions? Councilmember Woodard?
Thank you, Mayor. We were going to meet. No, we did meet, but then we ran out of time. And so my notes, unfortunately, are not the greatest in front of me. But I'm hoping you'll just remember this, City Manager, which is in one of your written weekly reports that you're, pulling this information from on some levels that you share via email. There was mention of an Arts in the Park coming up. And I'm going to say like a $6,000 budget attached to it. I just kind of want to hear a little bit more about that. My hope, really, it seemed like it's coming from at least one commission. My hope was it's come from multiple commissions. I mean, it's almost, theoretically speaking, right down the line, the cross section between at least three commissions, parks, arts, and diversity, depending on how you play it. So I'm just curious if you can speak to that. And then there's a second one, and this one's going to be more of let's see what you come up with, because all I have written down is something about $250,000, and I have no more notes than that in front of me because it's in the written form. So if that rings a bell, because it's from the same report, but unfortunately I can't find that report quick enough online. First question is speak to the arts in the park, or the theater in the park, or whatever it's going to be. And then second one, if you remember what the 250K is, let's see if I can remember what my question would have been from that one. So two parts, two different questions, really.
The first one about the art in the park, I can definitely answer. I am searching my brain for the 250K, but maybe by the time I'm done talking about art in the park, I'll remember what that is. So there is a idea for a summer play in the park event. And one of the things that we've been looking at is the date has not been selected yet. The actual play is under consideration for which one the group would like to put on in consultation with the Recreation Parks Advisory Committee. When they have those answers, I will talk to council about those. There is, at this point, and I don't believe it's been made formally, but there is an idea to support that event with a $6,000 from the city. But that recommendation has not formally come from the RPAC yet. But when it does, I will definitely bring that to council and share that idea. The 250K, it has not come to me yet, but I will.
Actually, I know what it is. Nope, that's on me, and I am super embarrassed to be that guy all of a sudden. I'm like, apparently $250,000. I forget what it's about. Actually, it's that amazing and very humbling donation that was our contribution or investment, I would say, that was made from our city to the neighborhood center. Just following up that I'm hearing that there's some gridlock there, and just didn't mean to publicly air that one, but at least put that to rest and say, oh, I was going to follow up with that one and just say, what's the progress on that? And then leave that aside. So no more guesswork. I figured it out. That's why I was like, what is this note? Oh, there's no note. It's just me.
Yeah, and just real briefly, I got the draft contract on that this afternoon about 1 o'clock, and we'll be reviewing that tomorrow and over the weekend.
Any more questions, comments? Okay, thank you. So now we can move on to the presentation of the 2024 State Legislative Agenda by Gordon Thomas Honeywell's Shelley Helder, who is I can see you now.
Right. Can you hear me okay?
You're kind of soft.
Okay, I will speak up louder. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, a little bit better. Okay, I'll just make sure to project. So hopefully you can hear me okay. Well, good evening. As the mayor said, I am Shelley Helder, and I have the privilege of serving the city as your state lobbyist. And I'm pleased to be joining you tonight to talk about the city's preparation for the 2024 state legislative session. Let's see here. This evening, I'm going to provide an overview of what we expect from the 2024 session. We'll review the city's draft legislative agenda, and then I'll wrap up by talking about next steps. Since I have my screen shared and it's a little difficult to see you all, I'll finish the presentation and then look forward to your feedback and questions. The 2024 session will be a short 60-day session. It's the second of the biennium, and the legislature's primary objective will be to adopt supplemental operating, capital, and transportation budgets. The supplemental budgets are designed to make just small changes to the biennial budgets and to account for changes in revenue projections and program or project costs. For the operating budget, The most recent forecast shows that the state has roughly 900 million more than what was anticipated when the budget was adopted. On the transportation budget, is somewhat of a different picture. Transportation projects around the state are continuing to come in higher than they were estimated. And the WashDOT, in their most recent estimates, put together that projects are costing upwards of 30% more than what was appropriated. So transportation budget writers are essentially facing a budget deficit and will need to figure out how to balance the existing biennial budget. The capital budget has roughly $95 million in remaining bonding capacity for the supplemental year. So that's a relatively small amount for a supplemental capital budget. On the policy side, every bill that was introduced in the 2023 session that did not pass will be automatically reintroduced. And of course, legislators can also introduce new bills. Democrats will continue to hold some strong majorities in both chambers. And every member of the House and half of the Senate will be up for re-election in November of 2024. For the most part, committee assignments and chairs for those committees will remain the same as this past session. The one exception that I will note is former Senator Christine Rolfes. She was the chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee. The last few months, she stepped down to take an appointment to the Kitsap County Commission. There's been an appointment process done to fill her position, and the new chair of the Senate Ways and Means Committee is Senator June Robinson from Everett. And so the role of the Senate Ways and Means chair is significant. They end up being the lead budget writer for the Senate operating budget. And so that's just a key change in leadership to note. Some of the major themes that we expect to see come forward in the 2024 session won't be surprising to you all. Many of them are similar to years past. First, housing policy. 2023 has been described as the year of housing, and I expect that will remain the case in 2024. I do know that there's going to be a push for a new dedicated revenue source for affordable housing. I think land use and development regulations are going to continue to be part of the conversation of how to increase housing capacity or housing supply. As you guys know, the legislature passed over a dozen bills directing changes in local land use and development regulations in the 2023 session, and their goal was to prompt construction of more housing. Over the last several months, legislators and some stakeholders have identified technical issues that are being addressed through proposed trailer bills, specifically a trailer bill to the missing middle bill that passed in 2023. And the intent there is only to make technical refinements that are necessary in alignment with the intent of the original bill. We also expect there will be a really robust discussion on transit-oriented development, which I will get to more, and as well as lot splitting. Those were two bills that were considered in the 23 session but did not pass and are already under discussion now. The climate and environment will be another area of focus. The Climate Commitment Act, which is Washington's version of a cap and invest program. It auctions greenhouse gas emissions allowances. And in the first few auctions of 2023, it's generated substantially more revenue than anticipated. And so the legislature will consider policy changes to potentially limit the revenue in the future. As well as make decisions about whether to return some of the collected revenue or to how to allocate the unexpected revenue collected. So that will be a major focus. The legislature is also likely to continue ongoing discussions on public safety, with perhaps more of an emphasis on law enforcement, recruitment and retention. And finally, the new Senate Ways and Means Chair, June Robinson, has said that the biggest fiscal challenge facing lawmakers in the 2024 session is the state's behavioral health care system. And so that's something that will likely face a lot of attention as well. So as I mentioned, it is going to be a short session, but it's already shaping up to be very busy. In your meeting packet for this evening is a draft version of the city's 2024 state legislative agenda. And the agenda is broken into two categories. At the top of the agenda, you'll see the city's top priority. And at the bottom are additional areas of support. So I'm going to start by talking about the priority for 2024, which is securing additional funding for the Main Street project. In the last 10 years, the state has contributed roughly $12.4 million to the Main Street project, with the vast majority of that supporting phase one. During the 2023 session, we requested $2.1 million from the state to support phase two. And we focused our efforts on the capital budget since we knew that the transportation budget had no new revenue. And unfortunately, the increased demand on the capital budget forced the budget writers to be much more selective about what they chose to fund. And they determined that the Main Street project, although historically funded from the capital budget, was more appropriately funded through the transportation budget. So we shifted our focus to the transportation budget, but as we knew, there was no money available. So given our learnings from this past session, the Main Street project doesn't compete well within the capital budget. And the reality is that the transportation budget is already in a deficit. So frankly, we're in a tough place headed into 2024. Of course, we can and we still will submit a funding request for direct appropriation. But knowing the condition of the transportation budget, we need to have an alternative strategy. And so the good news is that there is a groundswell of support for transit-oriented development in the legislature. Granted, many legislators' interests lie in ensuring local governments are adequately zoning for higher density near high-capacity transit. But nevertheless, the policy discussion is an opportunity to highlight the importance of funding for infrastructure. And at the core of the Main Street project is infrastructure for TOD. So that's an optimistic opportunity for us. There are two versions of a transit-oriented development bill that are being floated right now. One proposal would allow cities to retain up to 90% of the state real estate excise tax generated within the transit station area, and that could be used towards infrastructure. Another proposal includes a new dedicated grant program for infrastructure to support TOD. Both of these proposals would require cities to accommodate a certain amount of density in order to access that funding. And I share this because our greatest chance of securing additional funding for the Main Street project is through the engagement of transportation-oriented development legislation. And this engagement will require staff to review various iterations of bill drafts and provide me feedback in order to effectively engage in negotiations. So it's a less direct way to get to our desired outcome, which is more funding, specifically $2.1 million to complete phase 2A. Which brings me to my second point. In addition to pivoting our description of the Main Street project to emphasize the TOD component, We're also framing the 2.1 million request as the final amount needed to complete phase 2A. And as you all know, legislators love to complete a distinct component of a project. And so breaking phase 2 up into A and B, I think will be really helpful in that regard. Shifting now to the bottom half of the legislative agenda, these are additional areas the city would like to see the legislature address. And we included these broad statements of support because we anticipate there will be bills introduced on these topics. And if those bills align with the statements that are listed on the city's legislative agenda, then we would weigh in with the city's support. Oftentimes, a bill has many components to it, and while one part may align with a statement here, there may be another component that doesn't, that perhaps has a negative impact on city governance, maybe has an unfunded mandate, or it creates a statewide policy that doesn't consider local conditions, whatever the factor may be. In those cases, I flag those bills for review by city staff and do not weigh in unless there's a clear guidance one way or the other. So I'd welcome your input on these statements, if any should be removed, added, edited. I think that's what at least myself and city manager have talked about, wanting input from you all. But before we get to that, I'm gonna quickly wrap up by talking about next steps and then look forward to your feedback. Following tonight's meeting, of course, you'll have the opportunity to approve your legislative agenda, either with the changes you'd like to see, or as presented. At the end of the month, at the end of this month, the Senate will return to Olympia for legislative committee days, November 30th and December 1st. And then the House meets on December 4th and 5th. And committee days is when legislators receive briefings on the major issues for the upcoming session. And when you're headed into a short session, it's when the legislative process kind of informally begins. So there's a lot of work that is done, unfortunately, throughout the holiday season at the end of the year. But prior to the start of session, we will meet with the city's legislators. And rather than sit in a room and talk with them about Main Street, our plan is to walk the neighborhood and give them a tour of the project area, help them kind of get a visual for what the city has planned for the Main Street phase 2. And I think the reason this is important is Main Street has historically been in the 1st legislative district, and since it's shifted over to the 32nd, we haven't had a chance to get them out and see the project site. So this will be a really good opportunity for them. And then looking ahead to 2024, the first day of the session is January 8th, and that's when we hit the ground running. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and look forward to your comments and questions.
All right. Do we have any questions or comments for Shelley? Go ahead, Councilmember Salmore.
Hi, Shelley. You're a little bit bigger now. It's so far away, but it's good to see you. My first one is, as we always ask, what are our chances for that $2.1 million? And you said most likely if we were to go for that, we'd have to, the DOT, we'd have to increase density. What does it mean by increased density? Because we're already doing that. So we have to stack houses on top of each other. I'm not sure what that means. Maybe you could enlighten me a little bit more on that one.
Yes, thank you for the question, Councilmember Sonmore. So as I mentioned, there are 2 different TOD proposals being considered right now. There's likely to be a third, but we haven't seen it yet. One of the proposals says that in order to access this new state grant program, a city near a light rail station would need to authorize unlimited density within a half mile of the transit station. The city, it doesn't need to be a, perfect circle, half-mile walking distance around the station. The city could decide that it, takes a slightly different shape based on having a freeway, in the middle of it. But the goal would be that there would be, roughly half-mile around a transit station, unlimited density. So that's one of the proposals. And that's a completely optional method. So if a city doesn't want to access that additional funding, then they don't have to do the unlimited density. The other, and that's referred to as, the carrot approach. Perhaps the stick approach that's being floated is a city would need to increase the floor area ratio, or would need to establish a floor area ratio of 3.5 within a half-mile walking distance of a light rail station in order to unlock that 90% of state REIT. The 3.5 floor area ratio is really hard to translate. And so that's something that the city manager and I have spoken about, trying to figure out how does that measure up against what you have already zoned. It may be that the city is already reached that threshold, but I think that's analysis that we still need to do.
Shelley, that brings up tons more questions, and it also, it hurts when you're in a city and legislators are dictating what they put onto city. I have no idea what unlimited density means. Does that mean we get to build over the freeway? Does that mean we have, I have no idea. Is there any guidance on what it means by unlimited?
I think the intent there is that there wouldn't be a maximum. I mean, that basically a developer comes in and they work with the city to decide what they want to build, what they can pencil, and there's not necessarily a zoning limitation.
Like
the only limitation would be what a developer thinks is realistic for the market and that what they could build on the site.
I mean, that's, in a way, it's a little bit horrifying because somebody could build a 20-story building in a city next to us. I mean, I'm sure there's parameters around it. Have they come out with the parameters on unlimited? To me, kind of reminds me of a buffet. You kind of can eat whatever you want. And so I'm trying to understand it a little bit more.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I will say that this concept is relatively new and it's being shopped around to get, this very type of feedback of like, well, what would that actually look like in different areas? The goal is to provide local governments with the option to have the density look how they want it to. So though it feels as though it's the state saying you have to do this, this approach is intended to give the most control to cities to be able to make decisions for themselves. And I'm happy to follow up with the write-up of this proposal as it's being considered now.
Well, Shelley, can I ask, so there's 3 possible funding sources that we could put in for the 2.1, maybe. If we don't look at that one, there's still 2 more. And what we usually always ask you, what are our chances of even getting close to getting any of that money?
I would say, I think the chances of getting a direct appropriation of 2.1 million in 2024 is very low. Just knowing that we've already been told the capital budget is not the place that we can get this money. Historically, we've always secured our money through the capital budget. And the transportation budget it is really, really strapped. So for a direct appropriation, I think the answer is our chances are low. I think we stand a much better chance of securing funding through either a new grant program or the legislature making perhaps creating a mechanism for local governments who have already increased their density to be able to tap into a resource so that density can be captured or supported. So I don't know if that answers your question as directly as possible.
Yeah,
Hard to
you've
say.
you've told us straight up before in other years, and after you said that the chances were kind of low and we'd have to go to DOT, it was kind of going towards that direction. So thank you for being frank on that. It helps us when we're trying to manage expectations, and so that's something that is important. And I just had one last thing, and it's something near and dear to my heart with additional legislative priorities. We did have the chief in here before, and I know he was working on one thing, but he didn't bring up, putting public safety onto the legislative priorities. I know that's something that has to be done. Things are getting worse. They're not getting better. Especially, we've talked about juveniles in here and how they have to get an attorney first, and a lot of times the police don't get to interview them, or if they have certain property on them, what can happen. And there's a whole bunch of different things floating around right now with public safety, and I'm hoping that our city manager can ask our chief to look into that and to see what's going on with that in other cities. So that would be one thing I'd ask to look into. But other than that, as always, Shelley, thank you.
All right, anyone else? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Shelley. Always nice to have you here, virtually at least, and appreciated the thorough overview of the upcoming session. I feel good about where we landed with the draft for the legislative agenda. I think it covers the topics that we have been talking about and that are top of mind for me, at least. So I appreciate all of the work that went into putting the draft together and feel good about where it's at. So thank you for all of that work, and thank you for all of the work that is coming both throughout the holidays and the busy start to the year. So thank you.
All right. There's only one more. And if, Steve, if you don't, Councilmember Woodard, if you have something to say, I'm going to give it to you right now. But if not.
Yeah, other than outstanding work, and thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your stewardship. And, as your whole organization, I get a chance to see you all in action in other capacities as well. So just thank you for the work that you do in the region. I was thinking those terms. I don't know if folks recognize how many clients you have, but it's like, where we might feel a setback. The good news is some of the areas are going to really benefit during this next couple of months here, so it's one of those, like, it's give take. It's a tough loss, at the same time I go, but it's good to make sure that we keep this in their ear. So yeah, we're not going to get anything right now, but hey, you keep, mentioning it. Perhaps you really mean it's important to you. It's kind of the message here. So I appreciate, that's part of the long game here. So tough loss on this set of downs. If I stick with Thursday night football on my mind and go with, we'll get this next one. So thank you for your leadership again and stewardship.
Yeah. Oh, we'll just say I put our chances at low, but that doesn't mean it's none.
That's true. All right. So if there are no other questions, I guess we can have Shelley go. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So next on our agenda is the review of the contract for the state lobbyist with Gordon Thomas Honeywell with our city manager.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Tonight we have a draft of a contract that is a 2-year agreement. Previously, we've had single-year agreements, and I've talked with Shelley previously about this, and it is my thinking that having a 2-year contract that lines up with the 2-year session of the state legislature, basically a long and a short session, makes more sense and serves our interests in a more linear fashion. As you can see, none of the contracts really, contract language has changed much from what you've seen in previous years. And Gordon Thomas Honeywell has been working with the city since 2012. and has been very successful, particularly on Main Street Phase 1. And we would propose that council put this contract agreement for years 23 and 24. So this is actually including the current year. So again, we lined up with that legislative sessions. Put this contract on the consent agenda for your next meeting on the 16th. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Are there any questions? Councilmember Sonmore?
No, it's 48,000 per year. Correct. Mm-hmm. Correct.
Okay.
So I'm
Everyone
going to
else is fine?
presume the mic wasn't
Oh, go ahead,
on,
Councilmember
but we didn't hear
Woodward.
it.
Woodward. I'm sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
hear
sorry,
what you were saying.
I just want to give feedback. And I presume the mic wasn't on. I could only hear the city manager. There was literally no other sound. So that was really interesting.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Putting that out.
Steve,
Those of us out here.
you probably could.
So
Councilmember Sonmore just asked if it was 48,000 per year and there would be no increase for next year, and that's correct.
Okay. All right, well, so this is going to be on the consent calendar on Monday. I don't know why I have no Wi-Fi on here. It's not getting connected. I can't link to any of these.
Oh,
Oh, no. The library, Snow Isle Library, right here.
your mic wasn't on. Good, okay. Yes, the proposal is for it to be on consent to next Thursday on the 16th.
All right, thank you. Oh, now it came on. Now, I'm connected through the library. Okay, thank you very much. So now we can move on to the review ordinance for the 2024 property tax levy with our finance director, Janella Lewis.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. Today, I will be presenting on the 2024 property tax levy. The amount to be collected, to set the 2023 property tax levy amount to be collected in 2024. We'll go over the background, levy options, and recommendation, and then questions and discussion. This is a background on Washington law. The cities hold a public hearing on their revenue sources, including the consideration of possible increase in property tax revenues. The hearing and adoption must be held no later than November 29th in order to provide the county with the information by the November 30th deadline for the 23 tax levy to be implemented for collection in 2024. A public hearing has been scheduled for November 16th for this purpose, along with the adoption of the property tax levy ordinance and associated resolutions. So I know on your agenda it says ordinance, but this presentation is for the ordinance and the resolution. The city is allowed to increase its property tax annually up to the implicit price deflator, or 1%, whichever is lower. The IPD for 2023 tax purposes is 3.67%. So the maximum a city can increase its property tax levy for 24 is 1% without using the bank capacity. According to the Snohomish County Assessor's Office, the city's total assessed value for taxes in 23 is estimated to be $5.2 billion, which represents a 0.036% increase from the city's total assessed value in 23. The estimated increase from new construction is $50 million, 0.96% of the total. The remainder of the increase's assessed value is due to an estimated decrease in all other property values of 0.92%. You'll see that the general fund revenues for 2024, this is what is the forecast. The operating revenues, 80% of the general fund revenues comes from taxes, 13% from charges for services, and 7% from interest, state shared, and miscellaneous. And you can see we got property tax, sales tax, and utility tax. Biggest pieces of the pie. This next slide is the general fund expenditures for 2024, and this is based on the forecast of 19.4 million. The 43% of this is public safety, police, fire, and courts. 20% is internal services, which is finance, HR, IT, and property management. 9% is community and economic development and engineering. 11% is parks and recreation. 7% is the transfers out to streets and debt service. 10% is legislative, executive, and community relations. The operating expenditures as presented in this chart does not include the reimbursement for interfund transfers. This chart shows the current 23 total property tax rate for Mountlake Terrace residents. There are 7 different taxing districts that collect property taxes from Mountlake Terrace residents. The state and Edmonds schools receive about 68% of the property tax collected, and 18% of the property tax goes to the city. Snohomish County, Swedish Hospital, Transit, and Snow Isle Library also levy and collect property taxes from Mountlake Terrace residents, which totals 14%. So you can see Edmonds State School, City of Mountlake Terrace. This table breaks down the different taxing districts, non-voted versus the voter-approved tax amounts collected in Mountlake Terrace. 48.87% of the property tax collected are from voter-approved levies. MLT non-voted is the general operating property tax. Mountlake Terrace voted is 0.25 EMS and 0.14 GO bond. EMS is on here because this is what we collected for 2023. And all of this information came from the 2023 assessor's report. This slide shows the typical total property tax paid per average residence for Snohomish County cities. So you can see you have Woodway way up here and Darrington down here, and then Mountlake Terrace is a little closer to not in the middle. $4,424. This graph shows the total current 23 levy rate paid per residence in our surrounding cities. Mountlake Terrace's rate of $7.14 per 1,000 of assessed value is $1.58 above and $1.62 below the lowest and highest levy rate, respectively. So this $7.14 consists of what you saw in the prior pie chart with the hospital and Snohomish County or Snohomish. This graph shows the total current 23 levy rate paid per resident on our comparable cities per the salary survey that was presented last week. So these are the comparable cities. So again, you can say it's almost in the same spot. Levy rate paid per residence, Mountlake Terrace's rate of $7.14 per thousand of assessed value is 158 above and 162 below the lowest and highest levy rates respectively. This slide shows the different comparable cities. This shows only the city's general operating and EMS levy. There's Mountlake Terrace, $1.16 for all of these other cities. This includes the EMS levy rate. That's how come the amounts are different. This graph shows the 23 average residence value of our surrounding cities. The average residence value in Mountlake Terrace used for 23 property taxes was $619,500. It's estimated to increase to $619,723 for 2024 property taxes, or a 0.04% increase. The prior year was 24% increase. This graph shows the 23 average residence value of our comparable cities per the salary survey that was presented last week. The average residence value in Mountlake Terrace used for 23 property taxes was $619,500. So you can see where we sit in comparison to the comparable cities. And I got the Mercer Island or all of the other ones from the King County website. According to the Snohomish County Assessor's Office, the city's total assessed value for taxes in 23 is estimated to be $5.28 billion, which represents a 0.04% increase from the city's total assessed value in 2022. So you can see last year it was 27 and it's 0.04. This year pretty much increased nothing. Now we'll go over the levy options and the impacts. Option 1 is the 2023 base amount plus new construction less the amount per resolution 873 for the fire annexation. This would bring in $3.16 million in property tax revenue in 2024 and would decrease the annual total tax per average home by $191 over 2023. Option 2 includes a 1% increase plus new construction, less the amount per the resolution 873 for the fire annexation. This would bring in $3.2 million in property tax revenue in 24 and would decrease the annual total tax per average home by $185 a year over 2023. This table shows the assumptions used to calculate the net effect of increasing the property tax levy by 1% for the general operating and decreasing it by $1.69 million and taking out the EMS levy. The assessed value of the average home is estimated to increase by 0.04% using the estimated assessed value provided by the Snohomish County Assessor's Office for the city's total assessed value. As you can see, the operating levy rate will decrease substantially by $342 when we reduced it by the EMS levy and gave $1.69 million back to the residents. The remaining will remain in bank capacity. The state of Washington has a budget-based property tax system, not a tax rate system. So when assessed values increase, the rate decreases, and when the assessed values decrease, the rate increases. Property tax rate in Washington use a complex math exercise to determine the rates. Oops, I went ahead too far. Okay. This table shows the assumption, oh wait, did I already go over this one? Thanks. Too many late nights. So the recommendation is to adopt a property tax ordinance that includes a 1% increase in the general levy, less the reduction approved by voters through Resolution 873, which is consistent with what is included in the proposed budget and the 6-year financial forecast. Included in your packet are draft resolutions for the EMS and general property tax levies that includes the 1% increase for the regular levy and a 1% increase on the EMS levy. Wait. That's not correct. We are not increasing it at all. We're required to, if we are not increasing the levy from the prior year, we have to put on the resolution 0% increase, $0 increase. And then the details are included on the ordinance. I had another slide in here, but it's not in here. And any questions, comments, concerns?
Could you get it to the very last one, the last slide? The one before, no, well, the one before that last one.
This
That
one?
Well, I was just trying to read, no, that was the right one. I was just trying to read exactly what we're doing.
Yes. So this one is based on the 1%.
The 2024 estimate. Okay, do we have any questions? So go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry, it was a lot to process, and I'm looking back over my notes. Thank you. First of all, appreciate you coming. I will say, while I appreciate that our tax structure is set up in a way that, accounts for adjustments and valuation, I do think it's really complicated, and I think oftentimes that's, the feedback we get from folks as they're trying to understand what we're doing is they're like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate, your efforts to explain it, and I think that's work that hopefully we can continue to do, because I do think it took me several times going through it to understand just the basic mechanisms around it. So, so thank you for continuing to educate us and help us understand. I guess a couple of questions, or maybe just observations and questions. I mean, I guess my question is, we'll utilize our communication channels, I assume, to highlight the public hearing so that folks have the opportunity to come and share feedback if they have any. Okay, great. I mean, I'm supportive of moving forward with the 1% increase. I think not only has that been what we've consistently done, but I thought it was interesting in looking at those graphs that a lot of the cities that had higher amounts of property tax collected had lower levy rates and kind of vice versa. And we are kind of on the lower-ish end on both, which is probably some of our revenue, probably is some of the driver around some of our revenue challenges, along with not having other strong, revenue sources. Although I don't know if I was going to say, I'm not sure if I'm correct, but it was interesting to see sales tax, I guess, as substantial a percentage of our revenue as it is. It feels like that has increased. I don't know, maybe that's accurate, maybe that isn't, but I'm hopeful that that is indicative of, kind of good trends among, local economic
Yeah,
activity.
in the state, they estimated that it would increase about 3%.
Okay.
So, yeah, they had a big jump. When you look on their website, they show their budget for the year or their forecast. And so I looked on there. And
I will say that's exciting for me to see that we are, have other revenue sources coming in and that are growing, which takes some of the pressure off, the property tax side of things. So I think that is all of my thoughts here, but appreciate the effort and explanation and look forward to the public hearing.
All right, do we have anyone else? I know,
Oh, sorry. I was going to share that one slide.
I know that this math is just, even our resident council member math teacher in the past, it took him a few years too. And so it made me feel better that it took me more than a few years.
There it is.
But I don't know why it had to be that complicated. But anyways. So basically, the bottom line is we're going to go up 1%.
Yes. And I wanted to show this to you because I think there was a question asked before about the EMS and the Snohomish County Fire and what was shown on. It is, yeah. I had the wrong slide up. This is the PDF of the presentation right here. Yeah, it's slide 21. I updated it last minute. I apologize. There you go. Yeah. So I wanted to show on this slide the 2023 actual rates were 7.4, and you saw that on one of the graphs that I presented earlier. And then the 2024 rate is going to be 6.47. And again, the assumptions for Snohomish County and all of those are just base estimates on 1% of what they had asked for in 2023, and then based on the 619 on the assessed value. So it's just a rough estimate because we don't know what, they could go for a levy or what, whatever, a lid lift or anything. And so this is just an rough estimate. And then down here is the portion divided. So this is per household. So $4,423.71, and that was on another previous chart that I had shown where it showed that 4,424, I think it was rounded up. It'll be 4,011, and then you would add in the Snohomish County Fire RFA property tax, the benefit estimated charge that they would have, and this is not property tax, it's just a benefit charge that they have. And then the increase to the taxpayer would be about $374. And we did tell them, the residents, that that would happen. That there would be about a $300 and something increase. And again, it's all based on estimates, so.
You have a question?
I just a curiosity question. So looking at the last slide, if I'm understanding it right, for 2024, if your house is around $600,000, you'll be paying $4,797 in taxes.
4,797, yes.
Because,
For an average homeowner that has a house worth $619,723.
I just paid my taxes and it was like 35.
3,500?
Let me see, what did I just pay? We paid two, so I'm trying to remember. I think it was, I was helping my mom with hers, so I'm getting confused on how much she paid. Maybe I paid 2,300, so.
And that would be
Yes, that would
based,
be about, so I think it was 40, so it must have been 4,300 for last year.
yeah, and it's around the same, almost 4,400 here.
It just seems so much more than, because, you know, I pay it twice a year, so.
Yeah. Yes,
Go ahead.
sorry.
Thank you, Mayor. And this might be a city manager question, but I think, so one of the things, as long as we're talking about taxes and tax rates, we had reserved some funds in the city budget for, moving forward with some relief, for folks, for particularly our lower income folks, as part of kind of our, transition of our fire and EMS services. I guess, do we have a plan and a path forward on that, or is that something that we are working through? And I guess it would be great to share with residents, particularly as we are sharing out new rates.
So just to make sure, we're talking about the 50,000 that council reserved from the return of the ARPA dollars. We have that set aside in a fund to help lower income folks. Part of that is what we looked at when we included renters in the discount program. But there are other uses. It's there now as far as developing a program for the remaining amount of the funds. That's something that we're continuing to work on.
Okay. I don't see any other hands going up. And so we're having a public,
Yes, there'll be a public hearing next
Thursday.
Thursday? Yes, next Thursday.
We'll have the resolution component of this will be on consent, but the ordinance component will be a public hearing.
Okay. All right, well, I guess we can move on to the next one, which is the same. It's the review of the resolution of the 2024 property tax levy.
And that's the same.
you've
I
done it
combined
both.
it in the same, yeah.
It's the same information, so we didn't
Okay.
see the need to go over it twice, yeah.
All right, so then we can go on to stormwater. Great. Thank you very much, Janella.
You're welcome, anytime.
Okay, so next will be the review of the 2024 Stormwater Comprehensive Plan Update Work Order with Jacobs? Oh, it doesn't say that.
I'm sorry.
With our Stormwater Manager, Program Manager Laura Reed.
It's a long title, so maybe it got shortened. Well, thank you, Mayor, council members.
You have to
Can
talk
you-
into it.
Okay, I don't want to be too loud because I can.
You won't.
No, okay. Okay, well, you have the memo before you, but I think the summary is that, every 6 years, we need to do a comprehensive plan to plan out our next set of projects through the stormwater program. And our last one was in 2018, and I was here to talk to you about that then, and I'm back 6 years later to say that we need to plan out our next 6 years of capital projects, keep up with some new ecology permit requirements, assess our level of service delivery, see if it's meeting needs, and make sure that our operations and maintenance folks have sufficient resources to do their work. Since the 2018 storm plan, we have completed 3 projects of the 8 that were set aside. 3 have been completed. 1 is under construction. That's the Ballinger Park Hall Creek project. 1 is in, we have an additional project in design, and 2 were deferred due to preliminary engineering results, one of which is the Main Street project, the contribution of the stormwater program to that project. In addition, because we deferred a couple projects, we were able to get 3 other larger projects completed, and in addition to that, there were 10 smaller, higher priority pipe repairs that were done by the crews. So for this next plan, the work order through Jacobs Engineering is for $188,596.54. I expect that we'll probably do between 3 to 5 projects, less projects than we did last time, because last time we had a lot of deferred maintenance that needed to get taken care of. And I am confident that we can deliver. I can deliver a workable and modest comprehensive plan for this amount or less. This is something that can be handled through the consent calendar. So the recommendation is to move to authorize the city manager to execute work order 2 between the city and Jacobs Engineering for the development of the Stormwater Comprehensive Plan update in the amount not to exceed $188,596.54. Are there any questions?
Are there any? Councilmember Murray?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Laura. Always nice to see you. I was not here when you presented 6 years ago, but I have been able to see, you know, the amazing work that's been done over the last 4 years, and I appreciate all of those efforts and all of the projects that have been checked off the list. I guess, so the only question I had was just around, I guess, tell us why Jacobs Engineering and kind of the partnership and background there and or selection process for using them.
Sure. Jacobs Engineering was selected through a competitive process last spring to be our on-call stormwater engineering consultant. And I knew when we did that process that one of the very first work orders was going to be the comprehensive plan. So I looked for a firm that could do all the other things we needed, plus the comprehensive plan. And so I am confident through that process that we found a firm that could do this work.
Awesome. Appreciate the foresight and the explanation.
Just streamlines it.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right, do we have any other questions? Okay. And so this is going to be on the consent calendar on next, I keep saying next Monday. Next Thursday.
Next Thursday, yes, that's right. Yeah.
All right, I don't think we have any other questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so next is the item, thank you, Laura. So this, are you giving the next report or? No, Jesse. Okay, so we're going to have I have no idea. I didn't write down what you said was going to replace it, so.
This item is for
that's
the truck purchases that were budgeted by council previously, but as we all know, the costs have gone up pretty significantly. So.
Hello, Mayor, council members, thank you for having me. I did want to, one of the council members asked a question about a specific property that may have had a potential divot or sinkhole in it, and I spoke to our supervisor, and we've been in contact with the owner, and we'll be there on Monday. It sounds like it was just some settling, so not that much, but I did want to answer that. And yeah, well, thanks for letting me know. Okay, so what I have here before you is 2 dump trucks, one of which we sent down to be modified as a asphalt hot box, and so we sent it in early, and that allowed us to spend our ARPA money effectively and not spend about twice as much ARPA money as we would have. And we feel like that use of the dump truck at the age that it was, which it was no longer effectively to be able to be used on a daily basis, was a good one because the asphalt hot box will be used intermittently. So, and we can keep it going that way. So if you take a look at the numbers here, and I know you guys didn't have a long time to read this, so I apologize about that. What we budgeted for D15 was $150,000, which was last October, which our fleet supervisors felt was a valid price for that, had made phone calls around. The current cost estimate for that is $240,000, and we're adding a contingency into it of 15%. We were told outright, maybe I should back up for a second, sorry. So the way we get these is we get a cab and a chassis. So you order up a cab and a chassis, and then when it's delivered to you, then you send it for hand modification to get the dump put onto it, and then the PTO and all the controls that lift it and let things slide out. So these are kind of a hybrid. You get a standard cab and chassis of a particular size, and then you have to have the equipment hand-built for what's left, which explains some of the price increase due to labor charges that have gone up. Things have just exponentially increased. The other thing that's happened to us is that since COVID happened, the big auto manufacturers are actually only giving us 1 to 2 week window that they don't tell you beforehand that you're going to get. You have to check the state website every day to see whether it is opened or not, and then there's a limited amount of vehicles that are available. It's first come, first serve, and you have to produce a PO within a certain amount of days to show that you're actually going to purchase it, or they move on to the next potential buyer. It's not structured the way government is structured to operate, which is why we're seeking pre-approval for that. And also we are seeking approval for the overage, which is over 10% of our budgeted amount. So let's see. Sorry, I could have been a little more prepared, and I want to thank Deputy City Manager Carolyn Hope for helping me out with this at the last second. She was a huge help. I think that about explains it. Do you guys want to hear the numbers again? So D15, we budgeted at $150,000, which we thought was valid at that time. We think it's going to cost $240,000. We put in a 15% contingency because we were told outright by the dump bed makers that the prices were going to change by next summer, and that takes that particular request to $276,000. D16, which is a 5-yard, it's slightly smaller. We budgeted for $120,000. The current estimate is $135,000 with a $20,250 contingency on it, and the total request for that is $155,250. The total request to council is $431,250, and that about sums it up. Can I answer any questions?
So it says here that the expenditure required is $431, amount budgeted is $270, and
That's
so you're requiring, so what we're doing tonight is $161,250?
Yes, ma'am. I'm so
Okay.
sorry. I should have stated that.
No, I just happened to notice this on the next page, so.
I think the other thing that I should mention, that just so everybody's aware of what's going on, is we will order these now. We're not anticipating seeing them. If approved, we'll order them now until the third quarter of next year, and then it'll take another 6 months to build the dump beds. So even if we are approved for these purchases and we order now, we're not going to see them till the beginning of 2025.
Oh, my goodness.
I know, it's crazy. It's strange. It's particularly bad with the big equipment.
I've heard that, so
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. Do we have any questions? No? Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Murray.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Jesse, for being here. I obviously never love to see these things, and appreciate you bringing us back the adjustments to review. I guess, is there any wisdom around how we can try to estimate more accurately as we move forward, given the, kind of volatility and the fluctuations in the market? Or, I guess I'm just curious how we try to keep up with, the ever-increasing cost of goods, including these ones.
That's a great question. I'm trying to come up with an answer. That is an exponential increase. I think Carolyn worked the percentages out, and one of them's at 50% increase. over what we budgeted initially. I think all we can do is get quotes and then try to add some type of contingency onto those quotes when we budget for them. Maybe even go to 20% on the contingency. And I can't imagine that things are going to keep escalating. It feels to me like we're at the peak of this, but I could be completely wrong. You know, I'm now 50 years old, so everything seems like it's out of control right now. I'm like, whoa. So I don't know if that makes sense, but I think that I would say this is that the individual who we have as a fleet supervisor is outstanding and just a fantastic individual and an incredible mechanic. And he is flummoxed himself about what's happened. And I think in particular, it's very frustrating for him because he in order to purchase vehicles at this point, we have to be nimble. And that's not how our system is set up. So can I answer any other questions? I'm sorry.
No, I think that was super helpful, and yeah, I appreciate that it is not just us navigating this challenge, and
Right.
I think larger contingencies until things, to your point, hopefully settle down. I like that positive thinking that maybe this is the peak of things. So no, I appreciate it, and you know, I think we need to move forward with these. It's challenging when budgets shift that much, so.
Yeah, if I could interject something else, not that you asked for it, but we do a lot of work for Shoreline. We do about $100,000 to $200,000 a year worth of work for Shoreline, so that the fleet budget's okay. It's just tough, right? It's looking at the numbers and the increases. It's kind of tough.
I appreciate you adding that, Jesse, and I know that that's been something that the team has consistently done work for other organizations to help bring in additional revenue, and I very much appreciate those efforts.
All right, so everybody, go ahead, Councilmember Woodard.
Yeah, thank you for this report. Obviously, not thank you for the numbers, but numbers are what they are. That said, it's not that I don't think we have a choice, but I think it might be useful in this context for residents who might be tuning in to kind of talk about, well, what would happen if we say no? Right? I mean, we're being asked to make a vote here, but what if we say no? Well, so just so folks understand the implication, it isn't this, oh, we would like this. There's, the context that folks have a better understanding.
Great question. So the first thing that I should note, which is noted in these memos, is that D15 is our only dump truck that, D16, I'm sorry, is our only dump truck that doesn't require a CDL to drive it. So since we took that dump truck and sent it to get the asphalt hot box on, we don't have a dump truck that can be driven by the park and rec and facilities folks. So the operational folks for Public Works are actually helping out when a dump truck is needed for them. So we're down a non-CDL dump truck, the only one that we owned at this point. I think it was the right choice to make at the time because it saved us a lot of money. We were going to have to pay, I think, $160,000 out of the ARPA funds to buy a new cabin chassis for the asphalt hot box setup. So from my point of view, it was the right choice to make, but that's the position that it's left us in. And if we didn't purchase the other dump truck, D15, the larger one, we're just going to have increased mechanical breakdowns until a catastrophic one occurs, and it will incur maintenance costs that will exponentially go up. It was built, I believe, in 2009, so we're on its 14th year of life at this point. Is that the right math? So that is a long time for a dump truck to last that's getting used every single day. So we would just see a decrease in service levels for the town and picking up branches and leaves and hauling debris, also moving asphalt and that type of thing.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just, I guess, a quick procedural question. Will this be added to the agenda online for tonight so that folks can take a look if they want to? Okay, thank you.
Maybe next week's consent calendar.
But it will also be added tonight, so if people go back and take a look, they can read through all the materials. Yeah, it'll be both.
Okay. All right, are there any other questions? I don't see any.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for letting me come in at the last second and make this request. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so now we're going to move on to the review of the November 16th agenda, and I don't. Oh, it's not public yet? Public comment? I thought we were replacing public comments.
We just replaced it and then slid it
Oh,
slid
we're
it
going to
down
go move
one.
it, so now we have public comment.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any public comments?
There's no one signed up in person, and if the person online would like to make a comment, please use the hand raise tool. Going once, going twice. There are no public comments.
All right, thank you. Now we can look at the agenda, and it has a cloud with a question mark on here now. It's not giving me the agenda. Okay, well. Okay, so see that? What is that? I guess I'm no longer online. Okay, so we have the consent calendar, we have the public hearing, we have the, we have ESAC coming for report. Eagle Scouts, yay. Eagle Scouts, I see one. Oh, maybe it says Scouts with an S. Okay. And public hearing and design contract. Does anyone have any questions on that, on the agenda for next week? If not, we'll go on to the council comments. And under council comment, if you wanted to give your report that we couldn't give last week, you can do it at that time. Or shall we? Shall we just go ahead and just wait until it'll be a long report for everybody?
It will be a long meeting, so yeah, next week is fine.
So again, we'll end up at the very end where 11 o'clock comes and we're not going to continue and we're not going to have a report.
I hope we don't go to 11 again, but that's just me.
When you say long meeting, I no longer think of 10 o'clock. All right, then. Council comments. Does anyone have any council comments? Okay, I think everyone wants to go home. Oh, Councilmember Woodard?
Since I'm already home, I just want to say awesome work on getting the fountain going. Residents love it. I've been seeing people stop by and just stare at the waters. It's wonderful. So thank you for that persistence.
Yes, I noticed it as I was driving in.
We're trying to hold off on winterizing it as long as we possibly can, but we're looking forward to it operating all spring and summer and fall next year.
So when did we turn it on? This week?
Tuesday, I believe. Might have been Monday.
And it's never gone out yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, anyone else? So nobody else is going to raise their hands. I can adjourn the meeting. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.